Hey, gang, thank you so much for joining Two Texas Lobsters React. And we're going to continue our trek through the Napoleon series. This is Napoleonic Infantry Tactics, a quick guide. Let's go ahead and get on into it.
In the Napoleonic Wars, infantry fought in close order, packed together, standing shoulder to shoulder. But why present such an easy target for the enemy? First, command and control. Before radios, orders had to be relayed by shouted commands, drums or bugles. Difficult enough in the smoke and din of battle. Almost impossible if troops were scattered. Second, firepower. Smoothbore muskets were inaccurate beyond about 80 yards, so volley fire, firing en masse, was the best way to inflict physical and psychological damage on the enemy. Third, morale. Soldiers were much more willing to advance into danger or hold the line if they did so together as a unit, urging each other on. Fourth, defense against cavalry. Scattered infantry were easy targets for horsemen. Only by sticking together could they fight them off. The basic tactical unit of infantry was the battalion. A French line battalion had, in theory, 840 men, but in practice, nearer 500 to 600. Our example here has 605 men, a typical strength for a battalion on campaign. The men were divided into 6 companies, 4 fusilier companies, and 2 flank companies. On the right, the grenadiers, made up of the tallest, strongest men, often detached to form elite all-grenadier units. And on the left, the voltigeurs, specialist light infantry, used for skirmishing in front of the battalion. Skirmishers moved independently, used cover, and fired at will to harass and unsettle the enemy, while preventing enemy skirmishers
what I'd want to do.
The same task. Most armies also had specialist light infantry units for this role, such as the British 95th Rifles, French chasseurs à pied, and Austrian and Prussian Jäger battalions. The traditional battlefield formation was the line, all companies formed up alongside each other, 3 ranks deep. Line formation maximised the number of men who could fire their muskets at the enemy, and limited casualties from artillery fire. But it was extremely vulnerable to cavalry if it could be outflanked. And even for well-drilled troops, it was difficult to keep the line straight while advancing across broken ground. So for manoeuvre and attack, battalions usually formed a column of divisions. This was a more flexible formation that allowed the battalion to advance quickly, though it presented a larger target to enemy guns, firing solid round shot that would tear through several ranks. And far fewer men could fire their muskets at the enemy. Theoretically, therefore, the battalion would deploy into line before reaching the enemy.
So smart.
But carrying out this slow maneuver under fire wasn't always possible or sensible. So some commanders kept their men in column, relying on momentum to break the enemy line. This was a risky tactic that often worked against raw troops, but led to high casualties when facing better trained infantry, like British redcoats. A column could be closed up quickly to provide protection from cavalry, or if there was time, could form a square. With bayonets fixed, the battalion formed an all-round defence that often resembled more of a rectangle. Enemy cavalry could surround the battalion, but not break in, as horses won't charge a solid wall of men and steel. But an infantry square was extremely vulnerable to artillery fire, and could only move very slowly. Changing quickly and smoothly from one formation to another, especially under fire, required training, practice, and experience.
Almost like a marching band.
In 1809, the Austrian army began to use the battalion mass formation, crude but more suited to hastily trained conscripts. This was a dense column with limited firepower and huge vulnerability to enemy cannon. but it could quickly close up to repel cavalry using the same principle as the square, but without the complex drill, and was much more manoeuvrable.
Very interesting. Wow, there's a lot that goes into that, a lot that I did not appreciate about antiquated military maneuvers until just now. A lot of science behind that too. You'd have to be a great tactician to be able to bring your army out of a skirmish or battle. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Thank you.